Hi, and welcome, Connected Yoga Teachers. It's great to have you here for our replay of the live podcast episode. I am super excited about the interview that we have for you today with Colin Hall. Before I dive into that, I wanted to give a huge shout out of thanks to our sponsor, Offering Tree. They are doing some really exciting things out in the yoga world. If you haven't heard of Offering Tree, make sure to go and check them out. And I have a coupon code for you as well. It's offeringtree.com/Shannon. And I'm about to switch some of my own stuff over to Offering Tree, actually. They've just added in Zoom integration, and they have a platform that allows you to have videos up there for people to watch and purchase. So keep an eye out for that stuff. And let's dive right into the interview this evening. If you're watching in real time, it's this evening. Welcome, Colin. It's so great to have you here on the Connected Yoga Teacher Live.
It's really nice to be here. Thanks for having me. And Offering Tree sounds really cool. I got to check that out.
They are a really cool company. I love how connected they are to the yoga world. And I also love that when I say, hey, what would be really great is to have Zoom integration. They're like, well, we'll get on that then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very nice.
They're listening to yoga teachers, that's for sure. So, Colin, tell our listeners who might not know who you are, what is the work that you do and who do you do it for?
All right. Well, the primary work that I do is for my family. I'm a dad. I'm a husband and a dad, and so that's my main responsibility is to make sure that my kids are feeling loved and taken care of, and that's job number one. Job number two is really at Bodhi Tree Yoga here in Regina, Saskatchewan. And Bodhi Tree has been open for about 16 years now. We are a pretty small little community. It's not a huge studio. We have maybe 10 or 15 teachers and 50 or 60 classes a week. It's primarily just my wife and I running it together. And then I also work for Yoga International. And so for Yoga International, I write and I teach classes for them. If you're into checking out the Yoga International stuff, it's yogainternational.com/Colin Hall. And there you'll find a bunch of writing. I do yoga history, yoga philosophy, and just like regular yoga classes too. People can do stretchy things, but all of it with like a bit of a light heart. I try not to take myself too seriously.
That's amazing. How many kids do you have?
Just two.
Just
I have
two. Well, that's
yeah.
lots.
Yeah, I've got a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. And I know you're just about to say, Colin, you look way too young to have a 16 and a 14-year-old. But it's all the yoga. It just sort of keeps this looking fresh.
That's amazing. My youngest is just about to turn 16. So mine are 16, 18, and and 22. Almost 16, 18, 22. I'll keep them straight.
It's my turn. You look way too young to have kids that old.
See, it's the yoga. So 16 years of running a yoga studio. What made you decide to open a yoga studio?
My wife and I lived in a city called Calgary, Alberta, for a number of years, and we were teaching classes, both of us teaching full-time there in Calgary. And my family and her family both are from Saskatchewan. We decided we wanted to move back. So we moved back to Regina, and we kind of studio hopped for a little while and checked out. Basically, we're like, where do we want to teach? What's going to be our home studio? And we just didn't find one that had what we were looking for. There wasn't a place. At the time, I was, what's the word? I don't know, kind of an Iyengar dork. I just really liked, I don't know if mean is the right word for it, but I really liked yoga teachers that are kind of like a little intense. classes are a little scary. I had a taste for that, and I didn't find that anywhere. I very fortunately have moved on from that phase. But yeah, I just didn't find what we were looking for. Sarah does yoga therapy, and she didn't find the yoga therapy stuff. So we're like, I guess we just have to make it. So that was why we opened the thing. Is just there. It looked to us like there was a bit of a gap in terms of what was being offered in Regina. We thought instead of complaining about it, we might as well just try to fill that gap ourselves.
That's amazing. So then this December, I read in the national news that you were closing your yoga studio, even though the government in Saskatchewan wasn't telling you to. So what was that like?
Um, well, it wasn't like much, to be honest. Like I didn't think of it as a big deal. I felt like I needed to explain myself. So I made a post on Facebook just saying basically like, I know that the government said that we're allowed to be open, but I don't feel like it's safe. I don't feel like it's a good idea. I think that sometimes there's a very wide gulf that exists in between what you're allowed to do and what you should do. Those are very different things very often. And we were allowed to be open, but I didn't feel like we should be open. And I just wanted to explain that to our students and to our teachers. And I wanted to do it all in one fell swoop. So I made this post on Facebook, and then so odd, a friend of mine texted me and was like, "Hey, you just got quoted in the provincial legislature." So one of our MLAs got up on the floor of the legislature, and were quoting my Facebook post. And then, of course, things kind of went a little weird after that. There was just like a lot of buzz and a lot of talk about it. But again, like I didn't feel like it was particularly controversial or even all that interesting. Other people seemed to think it was pretty interesting. This is going to sound a little bit far out. Okay, I am a yoga teacher who also likes professional football, which throws people off sometimes. But I really like the NFL. I'm a big NFL fan. And there was a football player a few years ago who was very high draft pick, got paid very, very well. His name is Ricky Williams. Got drafted by the Saints, moved on to the Dolphins. Yoga teachers everywhere right now are like, so anyway, Ricky Williams walked away from a professional football contract and became a yoga teacher. He moved to Australia and eventually to India. And everyone was like, "This guy has lost his mind. What's he doing? It's bananas." And in interviews with Ricky Williams, he was like, "I don't understand why this is so weird." I was faced with an issue. I wasn't very happy doing what I'm doing. I decided to do something different. Why is that so hard? Like, why is that so hard for people to wrap their heads around? And I kind of felt like Ricky Williams. I kind of was like, I don't, I don't know. I don't know how I can, in good conscience, ask teachers or even have teachers feel pressured, like they should show up and teach in-person classes. How more than anything else, I was worried. I was worried that a teacher or a student would contract COVID at our yoga studio and spread that to other people and potentially kill somebody. And even though it's allowed, I was like, I can't. It feels pretty simple to me. I can't have that on my hands. And if that means that my yoga studio goes under, geez, I really hope it doesn't. But if it means that my yoga studio goes under, I can live with that. Where I'm not sure I can live with somebody losing their mom or their grandma because they came to a yoga class because I decided it was okay. So I just sort of put those things on the scale, and not killing people. It won the day.
You know, that's a huge responsibility when you talk about having yoga teachers coming to work and them feeling the pressure to come to work and also looking at the big picture, like what if, worst case scenario. That's a huge amount of responsibility.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it made national news, or maybe there were a lot of other people having the discussion of like, why are we allowed to do these things? And there has been a lot of discussion on the other side as well. Why aren't we allowed to do things?
Mhm.
How has it been since you made that decision?
Well, I mean, yoga wise, I don't particularly care for teaching online. I don't love it. I I'm one part yoga teacher, one part entertainer, and I'm not ashamed to say that. Like I feel like my classes are part stand-up comedy. I like the spotlight. And I know yoga teachers aren't supposed to say that, but it's true. I really enjoy stages and microphones. I'm having a great time right now. This is really what I enjoy. And so not having a live audience for me, it hurts, it stings, it sucks. I don't like it. So there's that. Um, Business wise, we've been okay. The There is enough people that still want yoga but don't want to do it in person. They actually prefer, I think many of them, to be able to be in their underwear and just be in their living room doing yoga. I think there's enough of those people around that financially we've been fine. Now, I should add, we do have some government support. So we have right now a wage support from the federal government where they are paying a portion of our wages, not to our teachers because they're contractors, but to our employees at the studio, which is primarily just our manager at this point. But that has helped a lot. And there's also mortgage and rent relief available for small businesses. And so what I don't want to do is have somebody who's running a small yoga studio somewhere in the States that doesn't have access to any federal or state programs and have me be like, why are you still open? What's wrong? You know what I mean? I don't want to do that. I get it. If you take away those support programs, I feel like we'd still be okay, but just barely. Like it would be not good. It would be extremely stressful, and it's stressful as it is. But it's been okay. Like I I feel like yoga only very recently moved into yoga studios, like 100 years ago or so. Um, so the yoga's fine. Like the yoga doesn't need yoga studios. The yoga is just cool. It'll keep on doing what it does because it has been for so long. So losing out on yoga studios, yeah, it's a downer, but kind of in terms of sort of if you're able to kind of step back from it and take a look at it historically, um, it's no big deal. It sure feels like a big deal when you're the studio owner and the studio is like potentially going to fold as a result of this stuff. Like that is, I understand that is a very big deal. It's stressful. It's kind of heartbreaking in a way because you know this. I think you probably know this better than most people do just because you spend a lot of time talking to yoga teachers. Yoga teachers aren't in this for the money. Very, very few of them are anyway. Um, it doesn't pay well. There's no benefits. The likelihood of like commercial success, it's pretty slim. And even if you do happen to have what we call commercial success, I mean, what does that really mean in the yoga world? Like, not much. So people who have been teaching yoga for 10, 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, those people do it because it's a part of their personality. It's a part of who they are. And so there's more on the table, I guess, than the job. It really is. It's a part of someone's identity, that when you're saying stop teaching in person, you're kind of saying to somebody, stop being who you are. So it's, I don't know that answers your question at all, but there was some interesting stuff kind of along the way.
That answered so much, and I'd love to hear from our listeners who are here live. What are your feelings right now of teaching in person or teaching online? I know that we have yoga teachers from all over the world, so there are some yoga teachers in locations where they're like, we can do whatever we want because we shut our country down. And gosh, I just like look at images from New Zealand and wish. Okay, so I have some questions now and also I'd encourage our listeners who are here live to also ask questions in the comments, because I'll bring in as many as I can here. So right now, what are the restrictions in Saskatchewan? Have they changed or increased since you closed in person?
They increased a little bit. You now need to have 3 meters in between each student. So what that means in practical terms is that unless you are one of the sort of the bigger gyms in town, I won't name names, but I'm sure you're all familiar with big gym brands. They have these massive studio spaces, and so they can continue to offer yoga classes. For smaller studios, where you're normally fitting in 15 to 20 people, you're looking more at like 3 to 5 people now. And so even though, like, technically speaking, you are allowed to have in-person classes, with the current limitations on it, you're kind of not anyway. I mean, you can have 3 to 5 people in your class, I guess, if you feel like that's going to be good or beneficial in some way. But I mean, that at that point, now you're asking a teacher to teach in person and live streaming at the same time, potentially with a mask on. And like, that's asking a lot. And we did ask our teachers to do that for a short while. And we were like, this is silly. It just gets kind of absurd at some point. So, but yeah, other than that, and I mean, there's some people are supposed to have masks on, but I mean, really, you walk into your yoga class with a mask on. There's people doing hot yoga right now. Like, there's hot yoga studios that are open here.
That seems wild to me.
Yeah.
Well, in Ontario, we can't go anywhere. We're in a full lockdown again.
Saskatchewan has the laxest guidelines in the country.
Okay.
Also the highest rates of infection in the country.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah. I don't understand what's going on.
The science is showing up. I know you and I are making light of this, and this is a really serious issue, but at times I just have to say right now, that's how I kind of get by.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would, I mean, I know that people have suffered a lot of different ways as a result of this thing. I know that. And so, yeah, I don't feel like it's funny. However, if I don't make light of, like, our provincial government here in Saskatchewan, if I don't make light of them, if I don't make jokes about them, I feel like I'm filling with rage. And that's not helpful to me or to anybody else. And so cracking some jokes every now and again is a way for me to kind of like break the tension a little bit. so that I don't start getting too angry, because no one needs an angry Colin. I certainly don't.
I'm wondering, how has yoga helped you right now when you faced what must have been a very stressful decision as a yoga studio owner? And then also just dealing with, as a human walking the earth right now, living in what we're in. Do you use
Yeah.
yoga, and how has it helped?
Well, I use yoga a lot. I give myself the same advice that I give my students all the time, which is that um, I feel like getting up early to practice for an hour and a half and like burn incense and whatever, like the whole thing. Um, it's just kind of not happening right now. I don't have it in me. So I tell my students, fit it in when you can. Take little yoga breaks. So I um, I had to get a job. I mean, I said the studio is doing well, but not particularly amazing. So I had to get a job for the first time in my life. This is weird. I'm 43 years old. I have never had a job. This is my first job.
Really? I feel like I have a
Seriously.
lot of questions about that. How did you never have a job at 43?
Well, I mean, I had like gigs, right? I've had a lot of gigs. I've done a lot of things for money, some of them regrettable. Uh,
So many questions. Okay.
but I've never had like a normal 9 to 5 with a boss, and like, you know what I mean, where you're sort of like you have to sort of like clock in and clock out and all that stuff. I've never done that in my entire life, and I'm doing that now. But one of the things that I do in my job is I have to drive around a fair amount, and I'm taking a lot of breaks. So every time I stop the car before I get out, I turn the car off. I sit down, I close my eyes, I breathe, I relax. I just focus on down regulating so that every single time I step out of the car, I have practiced, not for long, but for a minute or two. And because I'm doing that a lot over the course of the day, cumulatively, I would say I'm probably meditating a good hour or so per day. But they're in these little moments, and so that helps me a ton. And the typical thing that I hear all the time is, "Oh no, you have to meditate for long periods of time. You have to, otherwise you're just digging 100 s- small little holes instead of digging one deep well." And that's a really nice visualization. Like, that's an awesome thing to think about. I enjoy that. The the reality is, though, um, I think all I need is to stop the momentum. So I get momentum. I get hustle momentum. I get um, worst case scenario momentum, where I start thinking and planning and anticipating about the things that could potentially happen. And these little meditation breaks, it stops that momentum. So whatever had been accumulating up to that point kind of stops. And I'm able to kind of go back to neutral, and it starts again. But it stops the momentum. And I find that more often than not, I am the calmest person in the room. Um, I'm the one at work that everyone just assumes is that super cool, relaxed, super healthy, psychologically balanced guy. They don't realize I'm on the brink.
That's
Oh,
amazing, though. I really like that you've built this in, and, maybe you don't have an hour to do this, like, these small breaks. That's fantastic.
yeah. And it really has helped. And I think, like, maybe more than anything else, it's like it's a perspective break, because, like, it's very easy to lose perspective. It is it is really, really easy to think that what's happening now is this, like, new reality that is going to last forever, and you are screwed. And I mean, the truth is, again, what's happening now is the only thing that's happening. And okay, yeah. Eckhart Tolle, whatever you want to throw at me, it's cool. I get it. Um, you're right. The only thing that's real is the now. Yes. However, when I stop and just relax for a moment or two, I don't feel pandemic stress. I don't feel a lot of fear or anxiety. I don't feel that. I sit down, I take a couple breaths, and I'm like, you know what? I'm all right, actually. Things went weird, and I had to make decisions that were hard, and that has done odd things to my life. But here it is. It's happening. I did it. I don't want to get too philosophical about it, but it's a little bit of a Bhagavad Gita thing. You get tough decisions in your life. You get pushed sometimes to make decisions that you don't want to make. I don't want a job. It's the last thing in the world that I want. I want to be a yoga bum. That's what I am. It's in my heart. Um, but Arjun didn't want to go to war. Had to, right?
Yeah.
Had to. And so that little bit of perspective, I think, is so helpful.
What's the speaking of like living in the now, I'm wondering what's the plan going forward with the studio? Have your teachers like how has that worked out for your teachers? Are they continuing to teach online? Are some of them moving to something else? Are they like I sound like probably the worrying voice in your head every once in a while. I'm sorry about that. Um, but what is the plan now?
um, I feel like it is very difficult to make plans when things are so uncertain. Um, and I know that it's reassuring to have a plan. It feels good. Um, but honestly, I don't have one. I don't have a plan. My I am being short-term ambitious, which means um, let's let's see if we can continue selling some passes and continue getting people to come to these classes. And to our teachers, I'm saying, I know that you're frustrated. I know that you're annoyed. I know this is not what you signed up for, but I'm doing it too. I'm in the exact same boat as you, and just keep on posting on Facebook about your Tuesday night class. Keep on doing it, and that's all we can do at this point. I don't. Uh, yeah, I mean, I had at one point I was like, you know what, we're gonna rent out some space in a bigger building, and then in the spring we're gonna have outdoor classes in parks, and in the wintertime we can do snoga, and we'll cordon off sections for different people, and I had all this stuff, and yeah, none of it worked. Like all of it was just like, no, you can't do that, and no, there's regulations against that, and you don't have the right paperwork for this, and do you really want to accept liability for that? And so I had to let it all go, and yeah, I feel like my plan is to just continue kind of scrapping away and hopefully at some point come out on the other side of this thing. I realize how much.
I think that's really brilliant to like say, I don't have a plan right now. What did you call it? Short-term ambitious? Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
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 Get scrappy right now. Keep going.
Yeah. Let's see if we can survive February. I'm curious.
Right.
Both psychologically and emotionally and financially, can we get out of this month alive? That's a good goal.
That's a great goal. February can be really difficult in Canada for those of you who are tuning in from sunny locations. I was just realizing today, oh, right, I do have to get outside and walk. I hadn't walked for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized, oh, yeah, that's what I needed. When you talk about those short breaks and like being like, oh, right, a different perspective. It's very helpful.
For sure.
One of our listeners that's here live, when you were talking about like yoga being part of you, I'm sorry if I butcher your name, Nafai? It's very hard also to type it out phonetically for me because I'm also terrible at that. But says yoga is part of my lifestyle. It's like part of my blood that I cannot live without. And then I'm not sure about this question, but can you comment on how COVID teaches us to look at the true essentials of yoga science beyond the asana, because many are propagating it in this superficial way for commercial benefit? I mean, that was also around before COVID.
Yeah.
Any comments on that?
Yeah, I feel like that question doesn't require a pandemic for an answer. That's a question that I feel like most yoga teachers should be asking themselves anyway. So again, like I don't want to get too philosophical here, but you know, the line between what we call like yoga philosophy and Buddhist philosophy is very dodgy. It's sketchy. They're very there is not much of a difference when chips are down. A lot of the original hatha yogis were tantric Buddhists, and so Buddhist philosophy is very much interwoven with. Even if you talk to most yogis about their philosophical outlook, it sounds a lot more like Buddhism than it sounds like anything Vedic or Upanishadic or relating to the Yoga Sutras of the Bhagavad Gita. So there's a philosophy, it's called Madhyamaka. It's a style of Buddhism. Nagarjuna was the founder. There's an awesome guy whose name I'm whiffing on right now.
I'm of no help here. Did you get it? What was it?
I got it. Shantideva. And so anyway, Shantideva wrote this book that's basically like a guide to being a bodhisattva. Bodhisattvas are people who could have potentially been Buddhas, meaning they could have like left and just sort of lived in pure consciousness, but they decided to stick around. They're like, I'm not gonna bail until everyone comes with me. Awesome idea. And what Madhyamaka philosophy basically teaches is that the world is everything is dependent on everything else. They call it codependent origination, meaning nothing exists as an independent entity. No person, no thing, nothing exists outside of its relationship to everything else. So what I think we can learn from this pandemic, and a really good reason to close yoga studios, no matter what your government says, is that your actions as an individual, what you perceive of as your freedom to do whatever you want, is intimately connected with the lives of so many other people around you, many of which you don't even know. And so you may think to yourself, I'm perfectly healthy. even if I get this, I'm not that worried. But you don't know what impact that's going to have on other people. So yoga studios are in many ways intimately connected, interdependent with communities. And what happens in those yoga studios will impact communities. And so if it's possible to have your yoga studio become a 0% chance of transmission, if that's doable, if it's, and again, there's again, interdependence. Did you vote in a government who doesn't believe in government? Who's like, you know what, regulations, meh. Because if you did that, probably there's no help for businesses right now. And I'm not victim blaming because I live in Saskatchewan. I didn't vote for them, but we voted in one of those governments. But this interdependence thing is like, it is the takeaway for me, that there's nothing that we do, there's nothing that happens in yoga that's not having an implication for the community, for the world around us, and that's also not being influenced by the world around us. And that for me is kind of like if you are ideologically or philosophically a yogi, meaning you're not just doing it as a exercise, as a series of movements, as a movement practice. If you identify with that idea of being a yogi, probably you see the world as an interconnected whole. And part of your role then is to make sure you're helping and not harming, because anything you do that creates harm in the universe is harming you. I'm just going to leave it at that. I feel like I could keep on going on that one, and it's just going to get further and further out there.
I appreciate that, though, that you're standing in. For me, it's like looking at ahimsa. You know, we all said that that's one of our 8 limbs of yoga, and we look at this of how we can take care of ourselves and our practice and our students and our communities and the environment. And for me, this has become part of that. So Nafay, I hope I'm saying it right, says thank you for the honest answer. Timber is here and says, right now, so many teachers are looking at each other as competition. I think this existed as well before the pandemic, but I do see it taking it up a notch right now rather than colleagues. Same thing with studios. Think of what we could all accomplish together. What are your thoughts on like that? Working together, if we're all interconnected, like you just said.
Yeah.
Because running a studio, like you see what the studio down the street's doing, and they just put a pass out for a little bit cheaper. And tell us about that.
Here, this is not the good answer. This is not at all what anybody wants to hear. But yoga is a community of practice. Meaning, if you do this practice, you are technically in the yoga community. So what does that mean practically? Well, it means that the dude with the wolf hat who has taken over the Capitol building, the wolf guy, the face paint wolf guy, the Viking, yeah, he's a yogi. Okay? Because we're a community of practice, there's nothing that really connects us in terms of philosophy, ideology, worldview, politics. There's no connection there. I know everybody listening right now should be thinking the same thing. But what about the Yoga Sutras? That's what you should think. Yeah, what about the 8 limbs? But I mean, the fact of the matter is, um, the 8 limbs. There were thousands and thousands of yogis practicing yoga who had no idea what the 8 limbs were for hundreds and hundreds of years, until somebody rediscovered that book, translated into English, and then said, "This is the book. This is the," and then everyone goes, "Oh, yeah, right, the 8 limbs." So yoga was a community of practice long before modern postural yoga, long before what we're doing now. There was very little knitting it all together. Now, that doesn't mean we need to compete with each other. That doesn't mean we can't collaborate and work cooperatively. And I sure hope that we could do that. And I agree with that commenter. Yes, absolutely. We should be thinking of each other as colleagues. We should be trying to help each other out as much as we possibly can because we're interconnected. And yeah, I mean, I can't remember. It was somebody I talked to a while ago was like, rather than competing over slices of this pie, why don't we just make more pie? And I'm like, yeah, yes, please, please, more pie for all. That'd be great. But I mean, it's difficult for me to say, well, you're a yogi, therefore you must believe thing X. Yeah, no, no. I mean, all you have to do is look up the hashtag yoga on Instagram, and you will find in very short order that you probably don't have much in common with a lot of people who consider themselves yogis.
And I want to add on to that I think that's what then takes the competition away. You were saying that you like to combine kind of stand-up comedy with yoga. And so I'm sure that your yoga students love your classes because of that. It's like your thing. You've discovered what's your yoga. And I think that when we all do that, or we say, you know, this yoga studio over here is going to really focus on being a hot yoga studio where we move and sweat. And then this one over here is more restorative. And us as individual teachers, that helps with that competition. You know, if you get a substitute teacher and they were very serious, your students would probably not be very happy.
Exactly. No, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like a university is a really good model, where there are sort of friendly competitions that happen. There's a lot of disagreement. There's a lot of debate. Um, two professors, both teaching in the same field, don't need to like each other. They don't need to be friends, but they do need to relate to each other in a professional way that lifts them both up, and that supports their students. So the last thing in the world you want to do is undermine your colleague, because that's not good for their students. Their students are going to have a harder time learning now as a result of what you just did. So that's like in universities, everyone knows this. Like you don't undermine your colleagues, period. You can disagree and you can say, yeah, they're wrong, here's why. But you definitely want to stop short of being like, yeah, you know, it's the thing that you do. And we used to do it in the punk scene back in the 90s. People would just be like, oh yeah, they're not really a punk. That's not punk. And we do it now in yoga all the time. They're not really a yogi. The only people who are really yogis are people who think like me.
This is fascinating that you just brought this up, because I have been thinking about this. If I took my own teaching, like 15 years ago when I became a yoga teacher, I was just sharing with friends how cringy that is, of like how I started out. Like, and I hope in 15 more years I look back at today and I'm cringing, like, why did I say that or do that? Because that means I'm growing. But for some reason we have this idea, like, why is that teacher way back there saying this thing or teaching this thing? Or and and I love that you brought up colleagues and supporting each other, that we're not like, that yoga teacher doesn't know what they're talking about. Instead, educating our own students who are in front of us, or making like creating an article about here's why I
Yeah.
believe, twisting doesn't, detoxify us. Go ahead and write the article, but
How dare you?
um,
My
thank you
liver
for
begs
that.
to differ.
Your liver is just craving that detox. I know. I'm Is there anything then that you would suggest to yoga teachers who are faced right now with, hard decisions around closing yoga studios or possibly canceling their classes, or like you said, you're not enjoying teaching online? I know a bunch of our yoga teachers. I'm teaching a yoga teacher training, and for this next piece, I really want to be there hands-on, and it sucks sometimes. So any tips or words of advice for that?
Um, you know, you don't need to teach yoga. You don't. I know it feels like you do, but you don't. I feel like yoga teachers, a lot of the yoga teachers that I've met anyway, are very thoughtful, creative, innovative. They're very capable people. So if you absolutely hate teaching yoga online, start looking for work. I know that's harsh, but honestly, you can do it. And this pandemic will end. And when it does, you can get back to doing what you love. But right now, I think if you are tossing right now, if there's two options that you're kind of juggling, where you're like, I could teach online, but that doesn't spark joy. Um, so the other option would be I can run in-person yoga classes, and you're like, and I'll do it safely. And I mean, hey, I just talked to a friend of mine in California. Her name's Sarah Aspel. Sarah Steady Sweet on Instagram. She's from Ventura, and so she's teaching outdoors with masks outdoors. And so if you can do that, um, right on. That's awesome. There's actually, if you want to check out her Instagram, it's funny because she posted a thing about not doing in-person classes indoors, and she had a studio owner go after her publicly and threatened to sue her. So yeah, it's all, she left all the comments up there on Instagram. If you want to go check it out, it's really something. So there are ways. I know I said you don't like it, get a job. I know I said that, but there are ways to teach it in a way that's safe. It is possible. Um, where I live, it's not. It's not possible really to have in-person classes that are actually safe. Um, and maybe, I guess, it's tough because I can just imagine somebody saying, well, look at the number of cases that have come from gyms. It's not that high relative to other things. And yeah, you're right, but look at the number of cases with unknown origin too. When you're doing that math in your head, look at the cases where we don't know where it came from. And that percentage, at least in Saskatchewan, is incredibly high. It's over 50% of cases. We don't know where the people contracted it. And it strikes me that a lot of those people might have been in gyms and they said, no, I was socially distant. I was wearing a mask, so it was perfectly safe. And so the contact tracer says, okay, not in a gym, obviously, right? Um, I think we just don't know. And with we just got in Saskatchewan here our first two confirmed cases of the new variant from the UK variant. It's even more infectious. I mean, is that something that really needs to Do you need to be in person? Is that necessary? Do we need to be taking that risk? So yeah, lean on your creativity. And if you can do other things, if you can teach outdoors, right on. Geez, that's great that you live in a place where you can teach outdoors. Wow, congratulations. But if you can't, and you can't bear to teach online, I think I think just find something to sort of get you by in the meantime, and you'll be okay.
I I think this is fantastic, and sometimes I think we invest so much in being yoga teachers, so much in the training and the time, not just yoga teachers, but any career, and sometimes we haven't stopped and asked the question, "Is this what I really wanted to do?" I remember working with a yoga teacher who walked dogs and taught yoga and was really wanting to build up her yoga business and was struggling to, and I said, "What would you rather do, walk dogs or teach yoga?" And she was like, "I would rather walk dogs 7 days a week." I was like, "Why don't we do that then?" She's
Hmm.
like, "Really? But I became a yoga teacher." Uh, I would say if you love the other thing, like, just figure out how to make that into a
Yeah.
really sustainable business. So, there we also have a thread in the Connected Yoga Teacher group where you can share job opportunities. Like, maybe that's another good thing is we can start to look like there are tons of companies now hiring because their online businesses are growing. So,
Hmm.
I think you're right. I think it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Um, someone saying, like, bottom line, we have a moral responsibility to our communities to keep everyone safe, not just as yoga teachers, but as human beings. And
Yeah.
sometimes,
Yeah.
some days I hate hearing this in my own head.
Hmm.
It, we had my kids over for outdoor Christmas, socially distanced, and everyone was like, "But you can get together as like with your kids before we had our lockdown." And I was like, it's just not worth it right now to make
Hmm.
hard decisions.
I mean, I want to go see my mom and dad.
Yeah.
I do, and I'm not.
Yeah.
That's that's worse than not teaching yoga,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And there are plenty of people doing worse. Whatever it is that you think is going to be bad as a result of not teaching in-person classes, there's lots and lots of people doing worse than that. And, you know, one of my closest friends works in surgical intensive care. Believe me, she's doing worse. Whatever it is that you think is going to happen as a result of not teaching in-person classes, um,
Yeah.
that there's people that have it worse
Yeah.
by a long shot. You know,
Yeah. Someone was
there's
telling me they're getting a lot of comfort from like talking with their friends about what they miss doing because everyone has that in common right now.
hell
I
yeah.
miss like
Yeah.
I was watching
You
a
know,
movie the other night and everyone was at the bar and I am not into drinking or going to bars, but I was like, I think I would do that
like
to be
that looks
around.
fun. Uh,
This was so great, Colin. I am hoping that some of our yoga teachers who are here watching live or watching the replay that they go and check out your studio, maybe take some classes with you. Um, and where can they find you? And I'll put your website up here at the same time.
yeah, so I'm not teaching much. Like I said, I got like a real job, so I'm not teaching many classes. But I do teach on Monday, Thursday, and Friday nights. So it's possible, and those are live streaming, which is like it's kind of cool because you don't need to be from Regina. Used to be, you want to take a class from me, you got to come to Regina, and that's a
Right.
big ask. That is like, and nobody doing that. But now, yeah, you can just jump on an online class and take a class from me. So that's kind of fun. I'm teaching mostly kind of relaxation and meditation stuff right now. So yeah, bodhiyoga.com. If you click on our schedule, it's pretty. We just use MindBody, and the stream happens through MindBody. So it's super easy for users. And then for on-demand classes, Yoga International. And I've got quite a few classes and courses that you can take. I've got like basically a bunch of courses for like people who are not flexible, just people that feel like they can't do regular yoga classes, and a meditation for skeptics course that's pretty fun. If you think meditation's all crap, I recorded a meditation course just for you. Um, so
That's
yeah,
really fun.
yeah, lots of opportunities. And if you like kind of dorking out on yoga history, the Yoga History podcast through Yoga International is it sounds weird to have the guy that wrote and recorded the podcast be like, it's so awesome, it's so good, but like honestly, it's so good. I worked with one of their recording engineers, and he sort of like worked with me for sound, and he's inserted like sound effects. And so the podcasts are like, it's not just dry, boring yoga history. There's a lot of storytelling. And to bring out storytelling, there's like sound effects that match up with the stories that I'm telling. So it kind of transports you into a different world. And it is season 1. I was so proud of it. And I think it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And I like it so much that it's made it very, very difficult to write season 2. I feel a lot of pressure to perform all of a sudden.
When does season 2 come out then? Or it sounds like it's dependent on your
Yeah,
writing?
I'm writing it right now, and like they're very research heavy. So I do a ton of reading for each episode. Each episode is running me somewhere between 15 and 20 hours.
And so where can we find this podcast? Because this is the first time hearing about it. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, it's on Yoga International, just on their website and on their app. It's also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's so dumb. I feel like such a jerk being like, it's so good.
I
When
think
it's me,
you're allowed to do that. If you think it's really good, then
but I really do. Like I really do. I'm just so proud. It's rare for me to phone my mom and dad and be like, okay, look, I know this is me talking to my mom. I know you don't really like yoga that much, but trust me, you just got to listen to this. Trust me, just listen to it, please.
I tell my parents that I talk about them on the podcast all the time. My mom might be here. She is a yoga teacher. She loves talking about yoga. My dad, not. Oh, this is so great. I want to hear from our listeners who have heard the podcast or when they go and listen to it. Catherine's here and says it's a big plus to be able to take live classes anywhere. I agree. Any time of the day, you could find a class.
Yeah, it's amazing. It really is. It's very, very, very. The fact that we have access to the technology that we do, instead of pouting and feeling sorry for ourselves, we should actually be like super duper happy that we had Netflix during a pandemic.
Right. They did not have that in the Spanish flu pandemic.
No, they didn't even have not even Disney Plus. Nothing.
Not even Disney Plus. Sinead is here. Sinead's a super fan of yours. I know she's logged in as our connected yoga teacher, but she's saying, check it out. Sinead's in Calgary. We're all across Canada here.
Fascinating. I wonder if I knew Sinead. I was teaching in Calgary in from 2000 to 2002, somewhere around there.
You can't forget her. Her name's Sinead O'Connor. She's not the singer.
Her name's actually Sinead O'Connor?
Yes. Yeah. Oh. She works for our team. Sinead O'Connor is on our team.
That's really...
There she is.
Really something.
Oh, gosh. That's so good.
Sinead
there
O'Connor,
she found it. Look at her.
She posted a link for us. That's nice.
She did.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're right about the Pope, by the way, Sinead.
I am super excited that we got to chat. Thank you so much for taking the time, because I know you rushed in from work to do this podcast with us. And I'm going to take a piece of your book here in this interview of like, stop trying to plan right now. That's my key takeaway tonight.
It's a good takeaway. It's just gonna it's just gonna cause you disappointment.
Right. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. This is, like I said, I love a spotlight, and so the fact that you chose to offer me a little bit of your time, a little bit of your energy, I consider it a great gift, and I really appreciate you, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thanks.